This morning I spoke to you about the energy contained in molecules of glucose, but I spoke to you in Hindi. Let me explain the same thing in English. If you take 2 spoonfuls of glucose powder on your palm and put it in your fist, clench your fist for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or half an hour, will you be able to get energy from it? No. But if you take the same amount of glucose in water, stir it for a few seconds, and drink it, after a few minutes, you will feel a little bit energetic. How is that glucose supplied energy to your body? You know that glucose is a simple carbohydrate, hexose. In other words, it contains 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms, C6H12O6. Energy is contained in the bonds, chemical bonds. When the bonds get broken, the energy is released. Conversely, if bonds are formed, energy is required for the formation of bonds. This is the basic rule. Now, if you break this molecule glucose into very simple compounds, carbon-carbon bonds will be released, broken, and hydrogens will also be dissociated. These things will finally give rise to energy. But how does it happen? When you take glucose, it gets absorbed in the bloodstream, and from the bloodstream it reaches different tissues and organs, and finally cells of the body. As the glucose molecule reaches the cell membrane says, okay, you are a pretty important molecule, why don't you get inside? But glucose being a simple molecule, it doesn't get into the cell as it is. It has to be phosphorylated. It becomes glucose phosphate and it is then internalized. Once it is internalized in the cytoplasm, it is accosted by a number of enzymes and glucose is subjected to breakdown slowly. This is called glycolysis. Glucose is broken down into 3 carbon compounds, and then finally each of them is further split and becomes 2 carbon compound, and this is actually finally called acetyl coenzyme. This particular compound is taken up by the mitochondrion. Taken inside the mitochondrion in the cytosol, and again it is accosted by a particular enzyme synthetase and says, okay, now you are 2 carbon compound, I am joining you with a 4 carbon compound to form citric acid. This citric acid is subjected to a number of chemical reactions. A number of chemical reactions are called cyclic process, and this is the whole thing is called citric acid cycle or Krebs cycle, named after a biochemist, Sir Hans Krebs. The idea is that when the chemical reactions occur, the hydrogens are gradually removed and carbon atoms are also removed and carbon dioxide is formed. Hydrogen atoms, have one hydrogen atom has 1 electron and 1 proton. If this hydrogen atom is taken up and if you dissociate 1 electron from it, the remaining material is a proton. So once the electron is removed, this is taken up by a particular compound, picks up the electron and removes a little bit of energy from the electron and passes it on to the another compound which also accepts the electron. In this way, electron is carried along, passed along through a chain called electron transport chain. Electrons are passed down. As they are passed down, the energy is gradually released. Energy is gradually picked up to be finally packed up in another molecule, about which I'll talk to you a little later. As the electrons move along, the energy is, of course, harnessed from it. And protons also pass along. The hydrogen atom with positive charge only. Protons are also passed along. As they pass along and end the end point, reach over there, you see a pile of protons, hydrogen atoms, protons. These protons are brought down the membrane in a gradient, in a cascade form. As the water falls, naturally, when these hydrogen atoms, or you can say protons, are dropped, energy is released, and this energy is also harnessed. And when hydrogen protons are brought down, finally these protons find oxygen over there, and oxygen, of course, takes up these protons, and oxygen and hydrogen combine to form water. So you get 6 molecules of water when glucose is completely broken down. These electrons which are released, harnessed, are stored temporarily in a bond called phosphate bond. See, there is a molecule called adenosine diphosphate. Another phosphate is there, and you put them together to form triphosphate. One phosphate here and 2 phosphate compound. They are combined to form triphosphate, which is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And this particular bond which is formed contains the newly harnessed electrons. The beauty of this bond is that with slight attempt, this bond is broken and the energy is released to be used for work, for singing, for doing all kinds of work. So glucose is slowly broken down into smaller compounds, and the energy that is contained in carbon-carbon bonds or in electrons are all harnessed in the form of ATP. So you get about 36 ATP per glucose molecule. In this way, glucose is utilized for the production of energy.